What's going on, y'all? It's a pattern nowadays. I want to talk about that pattern. There seems to be a pattern of people online, and I'm seeing it more and more. I say more so on Facebook and Twitter more than anywhere, where instead of the oppressed going against the oppressor and saying, hey, we're coming up, we're seeing the oppressed go against the oppressed. And it stands to testament a whole bunch of things. But first of all, I want to put it to you like this. Let's talk sociology. Let's take sociology for a minute. One of my favorite topics I had in college was a side course, but I took it anyway just because I wanted to know socially how are demographics collected, how do they disperse amongst the crowds, and this is what I came up with. Right now during this pandemic, jobs have been lost. I think I saw this past weekend the count was somewhere around 270,000 new claims of joblessness, and that means whatever, spectrum of that is per se. And so I don't see, with that being said, a $1.9 trillion package being signed, which I told you guys that was going to happen. I don't see, with that being said and done, how now this is because see, there's a need. That's the point we're getting at here. There's a need. Not only is there a need, but the numbers keep increasing every week. And the numbers particularly increase when it comes to females. Yes, females. Females right now, according to the CDC and other demographics, make up the highest population of unemployed right now. Yet, when I go online, I don't see anything but a whole bunch of women on there bashing not only other men, but other women instead of the so-called oppressor. So, it made me come to this. I said to myself, okay, if we're financially shaming each other, and that's what we're doing here, let's talk about origins. Let's go there. See, my origin doesn't come from the ghetto. My grandfather, who was from Philly, my uncles, that all lived in this city, grew up around in this city, and they're talking my great uncles here. They all made sure that they went. My grandfather was a mortician, so they all made sure they went put in the bus, so all their kids would go to college, as they did, except for three. Now, the three that didn't go to college, fortunately enough, the three that didn't go to college, like that gentleman who just walked past me, the three that didn't go to college still were somehow successful nevertheless. And so that stands as testament onto itself. Now, moving on, socially, you don't have everybody with a taste for education or further education outside primary school. And that's what it is. That has increased, in my opinion, because of the price of school, the price of a lot of things. I mean, even within that budget that was written for 1.9 trillion, you have some things aimed and armed in there in education. And I know this because I come from education. My aunt, Elaine, was actually my third grade English teacher. My other aunt, Yolanda, she actually taught what we call special needs kids. And she did this for years. Also, she worked at the Covia Bank and Bank of America. My background comes from education. So I see when I hear somebody, it doesn't matter what octave your voice is in, a lot of people mistake the octave in your voice for actual intelligence. And that's so much of a farce. The octave in your voice does not dictate whether or not you're intelligent. The equations that you equate to people and whether the rationale or whether to deliver to people and they somehow or another can come to a conclusion based on what you said and quickly. Now that takes ingenuity. That takes intelligence. Being quirky, saying sarcastic things, saying cuss words, and things like that, and being passive aggressive towards others just because you feel that you can. Well, no, that's called being neurotic to a certain extent. Some people will go as far as to say a sociopath or a sociopath. You pick one. I am seeing a tone right now of that very behavior, which brings me back to this. In the realm of the online world now. There's a new trend where people are talking about multi-millionaires. You falling off. Like you saw this recently with the basketball player, the young man, where he asked, bring your father, where's your father at? And strangely enough, believe it or not, a lot of times it's men raising some of these feminine ass boys too, believe it or not. Now, I'll say to you this. When you group that type of personality together and you multiply it state upon state, locale within that state, county within that state, municipalities within those counties within that state, and I know about municipalities, I live in Connecticut. When you group all those in and they all have the same streamline, the same thought process or whatever, ultimately or not, you may or may not believe, even though every generation has its flux as far as what the generation is leading, and there's also a pathway. So there will always be two groups of generation that are together, and then there'll be that anonymous third group that will emerge from them. And that's what you're seeing with millennials and Generation X right now. You have these new guys that are behind them. I forgot what their name is, but they fall under the demographic of 15 and under. This group of 15 and under now is particularly the group that everybody is somehow seemingly paying attention to now. You should. And the reason you should is because they lead an order of which their personality, what they're doing in society and everything like that is going to be the notion for what's next, okay? And that notion for whatever, I'm sorry, I just got interrupted for a minute. Like, let me tell y'all something real simple, right? Go sorry, tomorrow out on there, right? All right? Some Spanish dudes are really flamingo, like pleasant cow, like a woman, like they like to hover around other men, and they're very jealous, man, too. So you gotta watch out for them sometimes. Long story short, the men, just saying the men, the women too, they can get a little, but I've noticed that a lot about Spanish and black men. They have very low self-esteem. So what I'm seeing now with this financial shaming crap that's going on online is making me sick to my stomach because it feels to the fact you're going against your own. You're battling against your own. You're trying to tell your own, hey, I'm better than you, most of you. And I do mean most of you. Ain't nothing but a stone's grip away from the projects once upon a time. Okay? There's a lot of people out here fronting and stunting. Like they always had it. They were always getting it. And the reason I took you on that long trip, and I said purposely what I was saying was the truth was, I know the difference because I grew up in a particular area where it's not like New York City. I'm not even saying fun, you know? And I lived like that for many years, you know? The last place that we lived with my mother, we had a fireplace inside there. It was a corporate apartment, so we had a fireplace inside there. Each bedroom had its own bathroom. We had an Olympic-sized pool. We had a sauna. We had tennis courts. There was a golf course built around it. Did I mention that? That was the last place I lived with my mother. So, you know, after that, I went and got my own apartments. You know, did my own thing, whatever came with my own. You know, I've always had my own cribs. I've only had 3 cribs in my whole entire adult life. Each one of those places I stayed at, one was 7 years, another one I stayed at for 10 years, and another one I stayed at, I think, another year, and then there was another 2-year period where I had a girlfriend. Shout out to Lily. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I lived with her for probably a good 2 years. And she was comfortable, and I moved out on my own, and moved into the place that I moved into after that, shortly after that, probably was like a month past or something like that. But nevertheless, this financial shaming that's going on within the culture now is going to be a problem for you. What you're teaching your kids is how to be poisonous and how to assimilate. And the sad thing about it is, within assimilation, there also comes degradation. And if you don't know what I mean by that, it means that sometimes, you know, socially, not DNA-wise, but socially, it could lead to DNA-wise and genealogy-wise because it kind of pinch your decisions on who you date and who you marry and who you procreate with. So that's a definite too. So yeah, we can put that in the equation, but it's not paramount. What's the paramount premise is their behavior, what they teach their children. Now, I'm not talking about Generation X, the millennials. I'm talking about the generation behind that. they're going to be so far removed from the things that you knew, like History Month, who was, popping in the 70s, and, the 80s and all that stuff, which I barely myself, have a recollection of. The damn sure wasn't old enough to take place. The sad thing about it is the shit that they're teaching these kids now is coming mostly from a lot of negative sources, and I think I found out the reason why it's so embraced. So I want to share this with y'all. It's just a theory, but there's a lot to support it. I think Lewis Henry Gates at Harvard University, he supports this. There's another black professor that also supports this. He had the terminology for it, which is something else, ex-slave syndrome or something like that or whatever. But I don't believe in that. But I do think there's some so-called psychological ramifications that are going to come of it, and I do think there's going to be a degradation of the population even further. I think it'll be self-infused. I don't think that it will be noted as being self-infused. I think that people will miss the point that it's actually being self-infused until it's way too late. And that's what I want to be on record to say it to you guys, because I love you. We're all brown people who think the same, we think differently, we move differently, but unilaterally, even whites know this. Unilaterally, when the time comes, we have to stand together. And so that means if I know some shit that you don't know, like stuff like vertical integration, synergy, Papio greens, all that good wild stuff, quantum computing coming to a phone near you soon. That is fucking hilarious to me. I'm sorry. They're going to have quantum computing more integrated with phones and freaking cable than they will with computing. Because if they did it with computing, they just open up the door for hackers. Trust me, that's something I know from college for a fact. The trajectory in which the population is going right now when it comes to people that are brown is one that's going to be of shaming. It's on the trajectory of that. The interaction that they have will be based on shaming. It's basically the same theory of Stockholm syndrome that we're always spoken about. And that being that the press have now started taking on the atonements of the oppressors. And it's sad enough to say that that's what's going on now. I'm in Harlem right now. I'm in Harlem. I got stories on these streets right here in Harlem of my own. Stories, memories, The funny thing about it is, throughout it all, I found to recognize that at one time anyway, you couldn't say what's up, talk all that lollygag or whatever. But now I'm finding that a lot of people, and I don't mean all people, but a lot of people, somehow or another have come to this engagement where they will not speak to their own, won't speak to their own, but will be passive aggressive with their own. They won't try to come to a compromise with their own, but they will come to a compromise quickly with anything that looks other than them. This is a segment of the population within our culture that we have to get rid of. And whatever those means we use to get rid of them, whether it be them speaking, whether it be their engagement online, whether it be their engagement on television, whether it be their engagement in media, their ghetto behavior, because it has nothing behind it. This is stuff that we used to make fun of people at the corner store, at the barber shop. This is the stuff that we used to make fun of people that acted like this, and now we brought it online and made it popular. And as a result, every freaking low-back dirtball you can think of that has this poisonous, nasty, infectious personality, they're now indulging in and spreading like cancer. And in fact, you will find very few bloggers, such as myself and many others, that can actually sustain and exist within that paradigm without being salacious, without being nasty, without cussing someone out, or without starting a rumor or having to be about gossip or whatever. It will not trend. I see the difference between when I upload, including this, when I upload something that has to do with gossiping versus when I upload something that has to do with common sense. If you are not careful, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm talking to brown people alike, if you are not careful with your children and with your children's children. And one of the unfortunate things is there were so many people that had children at 13, 14, 15 years old in this country. And I know a lot of you say, oh, well, I'm so proud of my baby, I love my kid, and I salute you on that. But what it has done is it changed the whole demographic of what it originally was. I remember when I was born, my grandmother was damn near 70-something years old. Okay? This is my great-grandmother, not my grandmother. And my grandmother would have been 50-something probably, at the time. My grandmother Mamie, she was probably 93, I think she was 92 or 93 when she passed away. The average grandmother now is between 31, 32, 33, and sometimes 34 years old, starting out. These are also women that are done with having children. In most cases, these are women that are career-driven at this point, in most cases, and rightfully so. You spent your time raising children, of course. But when you equate it to dating, and when you equate it to going out with someone or whatever, there sends this perimeter. You typically nowadays, I have a ton of friends that don't have kids. And so when you run into these women that are at these ages, what happens is a lot of times, and I'm not trying to bash, don't take this any way. This could be any particular color of woman, any culture, whatever, it's a demographic. When you deal with women like that, it's like, okay, what do I get out of this in the end? That starts to come to mind. And even though we don't want to say it does, it does. But that absence, I think, of fathers, I think that absence of the family dynamic, which it once was, when you had those movies with Big Mama and all that shit, I think it's gone. And I don't think that the representation of it is fully what it is. And I see people grab and trying to, keep it the way it is. I think Jay-Z is one of those people. And I'm not just saying that for being part of the industry. I mean that. I think it's a few hosts of others that have made their contributions. Jeezy, I see him trying to make his contributions. There's a lot of different people that are trying to make their contributions, but the music, as I've said before in earlier vlogs, like the music now has such an octave, where the octave actually drives a tone, and the tone gets a reaction. And that's why the tone is the same as it is in almost every chord that you hear. And if you haven't seen that live that I did before, make sure you go see that. And I don't say that to somebody saying it previously. I say this to somebody that was in the music business for 17 years. It does happen like that. There was a time when we had this stuff called horrorcore. It was coming out of RZA, Wu-Tang's Clan, and all that stuff, or whatever. They had a tone to it. The hip-hop gangster rap had a tone to it. The positive rap had a tone to it. All these have a tone and an octave to it, and the tone and the octave always stays the same. This is what's driving your kids now to say things like financially shame people during the pandemic. I see people walk past, I'm talking brown people, walk past people that are homeless or whatever. And don't get me wrong, there's a cut in between the homeless. Because there's homeless people out here because they want to be out here or whatever. And there's homeless people that actually need help. You understand what I'm saying? I've had people come on my page and try to financially shame me several times, and I'm a regular cat. Well, I've watched people in Harlem, Brooklyn, and the Bronx walk past people that are homeless. And I asked them, it's freezing cold outside. Yo, you want a coffee or something? You know what I'm saying? And I've done it. I've done it. So, and I don't have to film the shit and take a picture. It's sad, man, that this is where we're at. You can't financially shame massive, so you financially shame your own. Guys, I got a GoFundMe campaign going on. I'm raising 4.7K. I have to leave that place by the 31st. Please donate to that. There's also a PayPal link, and there's also a Cash App link. Stringerbell 80, $Stringerbell 80. I'll be back at you guys in a little bit. And I just want to tell you one more time before I go. Please stop financially shaming your own online. What you are doing is you are sending the message that there's two tiers of African Americans and two tiers of Latinos. And what happens is it becomes a disparity because you're now trying to become part of aristocrats. I don't know. Are you trying to become decadent? I mean, what is it? You can't become decadent in the ghetto. Remember that. So while you're trying to act all high and diddy and act like you're better than people, whatever, check yourself, because some of these men and these women that are out here can very well be your aunt, can very well be your uncle, can very well be your daddy or your mama or anybody else. You understand? Watch who you financially shame, because sometimes you might find out people come from better backgrounds than you and just don't want something. Guys, the links are in the description box. I'm going to try to do more and more of these. I'm on the grind right now because I got to be out of that place by officially the 31st of this month. That's what the word is. There's a link down below. There's a video all about it, so y'all go check out, see what I'm talking about. But hit the links, man, if y'all can. Cash App, PayPal, and Screw the Bell 8. I will talk to you guys later. Give a thought to what I said and love one another. Later.